Okay, hello and welcome. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. My name's Jahan and I will be moderating today's webinar, which will be on how to get a job at a high frequency trading firm. We're really glad to be partnering with Portofino Technologies for today's webinar. I'll be shortly welcoming our speakers from Portofino, who'll give more of a background on their company. The purpose of today's session is to give anyone with an interest in high frequency trading an understanding of what it takes to break into the industry. So there will be plenty of questions that we've collated that will hopefully shine a light into this. So as before, it looks like we've had a really great turnout for this event, so I won't waste too much time before inviting our panelists on for the talks. Before I get to that, let me just go over some quick housekeeping. You'll see there'll be a Q&A box there where you can actually ask questions. So let me just show you where that is. So please, if there's any questions that we haven't covered yet in the Q&A session, please ask your questions here and we'll make sure they get covered during the towards the end of the webinar. I'll go over the kind of agenda as well quite shortly, but we'll cover those questions that you ask here at the end. And any questions that you'd like to see answered, you can upvote those questions. So that gives you the ability to kind of, those questions that are most highly upvoted, they'll probably get answered first. So let me just also mention our Telegram group. So if you've attended one of our webinars before, you'll probably already know that we've got a fairly active Telegram group on algorithmic trading. You can join it by following this QR code. I'll also send a link to it as well on the chat. So you'll also see a link to it in the chat as well. So, please do join that group. It's a place for people to discuss algorithmic trading, statistical methods, mathematical finance, programming, implementation, and just to bounce ideas off each other for constructive feedback and discussion. If you join the group for the first time, please introduce yourself and give some background on what you're working on, what you like to get from the group. Before introducing our speakers, I just want to make a quick announcement as well. So next month, we'll be launching an algorithmic trading course. So this will be hosted by us at ProfiView. We're going to be covering all the basics of what it takes to develop a successful trading strategy and to deploy them in a live environment. For more information, you can sign up to the waitlist using the link that I'm just about to post here in the comments. So if you just fill out that form, we'll provide more information about the course in very shortly. Okay, let me get to our speakers. I'll introduce them. So Debanlina Argawal is a talent acquisition lead at Portofino Technologies. She started her career in recruitment 8 years ago and has worked in consulting as well as in-house. She's currently helping Portofino attract and retain top talent and is also committed to raising awareness about how to break into this industry and be successful in a startup environment. Mike Santsadigas is a quantitative researcher at Portofino. He studied computer science for his bachelor's degree. His PhD investigated deep learning methods in the context of financial trading. He's worked as an intern at a hedge fund such as Winton Capital, and he's also worked at CERN as a software engineering student. Finally, Richard Hickling, who will be kind of hosting the Q&A session, is a co-founder at ProfiView and has extensive experience with the financial industry in front office quant and developer roles. He's worked at many well-known companies, including the New York Stock Exchange, Bloomberg, Barclays Capital, Morgan Stanley, and Bank of America. Before handing over to Richard, let me just remind you again, this Q&A section. So just please do ask any questions you'd like to answer there. Just one final thing I forgot to mention was we're going to have a live mock interview during this webinar. So we need a volunteer for this. So if you would like to volunteer and actually participate in this this kind of live mock interview, can you just write in the comments, so not the Telegram group, in the actual comment, the webinar chat, can you just write interview me, and then whoever writes that first will interview them, and we'll send them a link, and we'll actually invite them on as well. So we promise it won't be nothing scary. Mike's prepared a really interesting question, so yeah, please do. You know, anyone who'd like to volunteer, and basically, oh, the chat is disabled. Okay, that's fine. What I'll do is I'm not sure how to fix that, but I can see some people have already asked questions, so yeah, I'll just pick someone who's actually posted in the Q&A, interview me. So that's fine. Okay, so for that person, I'll interview them. I'll invite them on, and they'll actually get a special link as well, which will have access to the code editor. Okay, so I'll pass it over to Richard now.
Okay, so we've got a lot of great questions to ask our panelists here, and all of the questions have actually come from the various communities we've gone to over the last couple of weeks, from Reddit, Hacker News, Telegram, and various other places. And so I want to say thanks for everyone who's put those questions forward in the form or as in comments, for taking your time to produce such an insightful and interesting set of questions. There were a lot of questions, and we won't get through all of them, but we should. The ones we've got are great. So please also, if we don't get to the question you asked before, put it in the chat so we can get, or have a look at the other questions, vote them up, and we'll answer those questions later also. Let's get started then. I'll first ask an initial question of Debelina. Portofino Technologies. Tell me about this company. You're a high-frequency digital asset market maker. How did you come to be? Why Portofino? And I hear you've been in stealth mode. What's all that like?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me, Richard and Jahan. It's a pleasure to be here, and very interesting question indeed. As you mentioned, we are a high-frequency trading company. We are market making for digital assets, but only on centralized exchanges at this point of time. And yes, we have been in the stealth mode for about 1.5 years. And the main reason for being in the stealth mode was, of course, we wanted to build silently. And we were very lucky that we could raise a very good amount of funding at the very initial stages of when the company was founded. So we decided to build back to front. Most startups, what they do is they have one successful strategy and they try to go to market as soon as possible, and then they build around this strategy. What Portofino did was they decided to build back to front. As I mentioned, we decided to focus on building our robust infrastructure and building the performant and scalable technology, which would support us, or which would in turn lead us to achieve our dreams of becoming a world leader a world leading market maker in digital assets. That was a very exciting time, I would say. One of the biggest challenges that we faced was attracting talent, making people believe that a company called Portofino Technologies existed. For those of you who do not know what a stealth mode is when a company has absolutely zero presence, a zero digital presence. So no LinkedIn site, none of our LinkedIn profiles were updated. We don't have a website. Well, our website is still the making at this time. There is no PR about us. So if you go on Google or anywhere, if you look us up, you would probably just find nothing. So this was a time when if you Googled Portofino Technologies, you would come across some coffee brand, some wine merchants, and but not the Portofino that people were looking for. And when I was reaching out to candidates, so many times I have been mistaken for either a scammer or a recruitment agent, and people did not want to respond to me.
Right.
And I believe I quite understand that, because I had similar doubts when I was contacted for this position. And of course, that was a very challenging period, but that was also a very, very exciting period, because this gave us the time and the opportunity to achieve what we wanted to be able to build without having to worry about other factors, which generally come along when you have a very large presence.
Right.
Your follow-up question.
Well, what about Portofino? Why Portofino?
There's a lovely story to that.
Okay.
You probably have all heard the song, I Found My Love in Portofino. Portofino is a very beautiful town by the coast in Italy. And our CEO, Leonard Lancia, he actually wrote the first line of code in Portofino.
Oh, wow. A beautiful line of code, I'm sure.
Exactly, a beautiful line of code. And that's where he found his love, other than his wife, his second love, Portofino.
And it would have been in C++, I suppose.
I suppose so as well.
Yeah,
I don't know which language it was, but
Yeah.
I'm guessing it would have been C++.
Right. Well, okay. Then that's really interesting. So the first real question is, what are the core competencies required to get a quant job in HFT and at Portofino? What are the minimum standards?
Okay. Well, I would say the standards, the minimum standards, they differ from company to company, but there are certain factors which are which would be valid regardless of where you are applying. If you are applying for a quant position, regardless whether it's a small firm, whether it's a large firm, whether it's Portofino, first and foremost, you should learn how to code and how to code well. And learning how to code and getting how to write clean code, production level code, it's a journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So basically practice. And if you are new to programming, maybe Python is a great place to start. You should have a passion for the space in general. Try to look up, try to read up news about financial markets, what are the trends, what are the general terms. Try to broaden your knowledge. And for a quant role, math background is extremely important. Try to broaden your knowledge from statistics to machine learning techniques. Machine learning is extensively used within this industry in larger to mid-sized to larger firms. We are not there yet, but this is something that would definitely help you. Read up about the industry in general, and if time permits, try to build something on GitHub. And try to, that would give you more experience. Try to, you would know what are the roadblocks that you're facing. Try to join groups like the algo trading group, where you can actually interact with similar people. So those are the ways, those are, I think, the core competencies that require. One of the first and foremost competency is, of course, your being an excellent programmer, math skills, and this is how you can build up on your competencies.
So if someone applying for a job put their GitHub repos on their CV, you'd go to them, you'd have a look?
Definitely.
Okay.
We would have a look. We would share that internally with the team, and we would definitely have a look. So we would probably not, you must appreciate that we would probably be receiving a lot of these links. So make sure that you have you direct us to a project where which is relevant to us.
Right.
Yeah.
So education then, target schools, top universities. How important is that? And then of course the secondary thing. You know, I'm from Australia. Australia doesn't have there's no actual Ivy Leagues in Australia. There's good universities, but you know, I sometimes wonder whether, you know, my university, University of Western Australia, people see UWA and they think University of Washington or something. You know, how important is it, and how do you stand out if you're not from a top school?
A tricky question. Of course, if you are from one of the so-called or the well-known universities, the Ivy League schools, that does help you to put your CV on top of the pile. But that will not be the deciding factor for you getting the job. Because regardless of where you have studied from, regardless of how well you have done it in your school, you would have to clear the interviews. And clearing the interviews can sometimes be tricky, can sometimes be tough. And we will show that at the end of this session. If you're not from one of these Ivy League schools, I would suggest that you try to get an internship in a quantitative field. You try to point this out in your CV, mention what projects you have worked on that could be relevant for quantitative fields. And yeah, that is what would help your CV to be screened, to be selected more. And then of course it depends, then it comes down to the interviews. And then when you are at the interview, the interviewer will not really see whether you will not be biased, I would say, if you are coming from one of the Ivy League schools.
Say you went to a reasonably good university, but not so well known for your bachelor's, and is it worthwhile taking the year or two to do and spend the money to do a master's at a sort of a well-known school? Is that, you know, you'll get the training as well, you learn at the same time, right? But from the point of view of, if you're just really selecting on a basis of, will this get me in the door? Do you think that's worth doing? You know, like, do you do a master's at Imperial College or at one of the big schools?
Mm-hmm. If you have the opportunity, I would say yes. Mm-hmm. Because it's not only for the job, it's also the people, the teachers you get to meet, the curriculum you get to follow, the exposure that you get to different kinds of clubs, communities, and that does help. But that is, of course, as I mentioned, only if it is possible. If your situation does not permit you, I would suggest get an internship in this something in the quantitative field, and that will not that does not probably it at times I think that could even be more helpful than just getting a degree from one of the better schools and no internship or no relevant experience, no relevant project work.
Okay, we've talked skills, education, and now money. What are the standard compensation ranges, and how does actual work in an HFT proceed? How does that, tell us about the money and this type of thing, if you can? I mean, because obviously it's an important point.
Of course. Well, we are discussing that it is difficult to get into a high frequency trading or any, like, in a trading firm in general. And that is because trading firms handle money. And it is extremely difficult to get into this because they have a very strong selection criteria. And they are well known for paying above market average. But I do not want to make a general assumption or give you a general number here. There are trading firms which pay very, what should I say? not too high base salaries, but they do pay very high bonuses, and they have equities and stock options. There are firms. So if you are a fresher, so you should, and I just to make things easier, I'll just say in pound sterling. So you could expect anything for, if you're joining a small to mid-sized firm, your base to start from anything between 85 to 90. It could go up to 150, 200. It depends. If for freshers, maybe not so much, but if you have a couple of years of experience under your belt. But the range of total compensation can vary between 100 to 7-digit figures. And it all depends on how your pay is structured. And the more senior you get, the more experience you have. Quant roles are, of course, very sought after. And if you can come up with a successful strategy, some companies also give you bring you into profit sharing model. So it is very different in different companies. For example, at Portofino, what I can say is that we have very competitive base, which is unlikely, which is not really very, not really very common within this industry. We also, for senior candidates, we have guaranteed end of year bonuses. For management hires or more senior people, we have equity, stock options. What is also very common within this space is a sign-on bonus. And that comes because non-competes are very common within this space as well. So if you are transitioning from one HFT firm to another, your new employer often gives you the money that you would lose out while sitting out your non-compete as a sign-on bonus. So it's a tricky question to just generalize, but yeah, if that gives you some sort of an idea.
Yeah, sure. And personally, my advice to people coming from who are new, who are young, new people, maybe coming off their first year of employment or else straight out of college, it's probably best to focus on the skills you're going to learn in your first couple of years more than the money. It's very easy to see the money and let that guide you from the beginning, but really your knowledge of skills, the skills you gain in the job are more important. I imagine that falls mostly on deaf ears, but that I think is very important. Yeah,
absolutely, I agree fully with you there, Richard. I can tell you, the most of the better quants, even the juniors that we have hired or interviewed, they have always been very clear on one thing: the role is more important for me. What I get to learn, how many seniors do you have, what do I get to learn? The money will follow. So if you want to be successful, not only in this field, in any other field, focus on the learning than on the pay, I would say.
Right. Okay. The next question is, do you have any suggestions for succeeding in a technical interview? Is it in HFT? Is it possible to interview multiple times? I'm assuming the questioner means for the same role in the same company or similar roles in the same company. And if so, what's the cool-off time? Do you have to wait 6 months before you can reapply, or how's that sort of understood?
Yeah. So, of course, you can reapply. Different companies have different cool-off times. Different companies, some companies would not let you reapply directly. They would say that we will get back to you when we have a relevant opportunity. So that is also very relative. It cannot be that I can't give a generalized answer to that. Some advice for how to succeed during a technical interview, I would say, is that prepare for an interview. Read about the company. Read about how to succeed at a quant interview. You can basically just Google this, succeeding or at quant interview or quant interview techniques, you would find numerous advice over the number of advice over there. Most companies within a trading firm, be it high frequency or mid frequency, does not really matter here. They would probably have you go through technical interviews, which would mean live coding. You would also have to solve some online assessment. LeetCode or HackerRank is a good place to start. Practice the questions over there and practice on a regular basis, not just before your interview. And after a number of times, you would get the hang of it, because there's a difference in being a good employee and a good interviewee. Unfortunately, if you are not a good interviewee, you don't get to be a good employee. So I would say preparation is key here. And be honest. If you don't know something, try to just say, I don't know. Your interviewer is always going to help you, give you pointers, give you a hint, ask for a hint if you want, rather than trying to
pretend or
pretend that you know.
Yeah. When I've been technical interviewing, I tend to try to drill into the experience of the interviewee, sort of tease out of them what their knowledge is, and sort of go through an interactive process like that. It's very. I try to enjoy technical interviews, and I hope that the person enjoys them too. You can get to a level of enjoyment. So okay. Jahan, have we got more time for questions for Debelina, or should we go on to Mike? A couple more questions? Yeah, okay. So what's the best advice you can give for an aspiring student looking to get into HFT after completing their studies?
Internship. If you are of course, internship.
Yeah.
Try to get a good internship. Try to apply for numerous internship roles. And at the larger firms, if you have a name along with your studies, if you have a good name on your CV where you did internships, the larger firms, I can name a few if you want to. I can send a list on to you, but I don't want to name anybody on this webinar.
Right.
We could send a list. They hire numerous interns every year. So apply for them, for those. Try to participate in maybe Olympiads or any competitive programming, and put that on your CV. If you have reached a decent enough ranking that puts you above other candidates who have not done that, that puts you in, and all these things you can do when you are a student. Once you start a job, you don't have time for these anymore.
Yeah. What if someone was to sort of write an algorithm, do their own algorithmic trading, and well, at least make a good attempt? Would that be sort of something that would be seen in a good light?
Absolutely. If you've anything that you have done that could be relevant, build anything that you have built, be it by yourself or together with your fellow students, fellow classmates. Just point us towards that, and we would take a look. And I'm sure Mike also will be able to elaborate more on what we would be looking at if you have built your algorithmic trading, or as you've come up with your arbitrage strategy, what we would be looking at. Mike would be elaborating that on his part of the interview.
I'll ask Mike pretty shortly. Right. So you got to be able to. I mean, so you're at university. There's lots of there's a lot of clubs at university, trading clubs and this sort of thing. You should join them, participate, do a project there, get to some delivery there which you can show, and be able to talk through it and so on. Yeah. Okay. Someone has asked, I want to be a low latency dev in HFT. Okay, so they're looking at the low latency stack, I guess. But my undergrad is BBA, Bachelor of Business Admin, not maths or physics or computer science. I'm still 21. Is this even possible for me?
since you're still 21, yes, it is still possible for you. Take the time and learn programming. If you want to be a low latency dev, you need to learn programming. You need to learn a low level language. C++ is the most commonly used language for low latency development. So learn that. I would say you could, I wouldn't suggest doing just any certificate course. If possible, since you are 21, I would do another bachelor's maybe, or just try to, do a certification and then choose a master's in this case, which would be in computer engineering or maybe financial mathematics or something.
Yeah, I imagine they, you could possibly go over, you've got your bachelor's already, possibly go straight over to a master's, but you probably did some sort of bridging course, wouldn't you?
Yes,
Yeah.
you would need that. Because you cannot, if you don't know computers, if you don't know software engineering, you cannot go into a master's in software engineering or any quantitative field. Yeah.
Okay. But certainly, the person says they're 21. Come on, that's young. You can. It may not seem so young, but it's young, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So what's your perception of the supply and demand balance for quant devs and quant researchers? Lots of people out there or not many?
This is a very interesting question. Well, if you want to be a quant dev, you are in luck, because everybody wants to be a quant researcher. I cannot tell you how many developers I speak to who say, I have been doing this since the last 2 years. I want to move on to quant research. And
interesting.
Yes. So if you want to remain, if you tell a company that, hey, I love development and I want to remain a quantitative developer, you would probably have the company more interested in you than if you say, I want to transition into a quant researcher, and you say, yes, you and
everyone else. But why is it? Why do you have an inkling of why it is that people want to get into quant research rather than stay as quant devs?
I believe some people find it more interesting to work in quantitative research, being able to build your own strategies, doing alpha research, it's something different. And then some people believe that quantitative development is repetitive. You go on working on the same thing. You are just working on improving your WebSocket feeds, or basically just you're connecting to different exchanges. But it is not just that. If you understand the complexity, especially in the trading on the trading side, the complexity of projects that quantitative developers handle, it is extremely important. It's extremely exciting, I would say.
And I mean, I guess you're valued. I mean, you're equally valued. You're part of the team, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. You are equally valued, and quantitative developers and quantitative researchers work very closely together. In many firms, the researchers do the basic, they build the strategies, but the implementation code is written by the developers. And so basically,
it's hand in glove sort of thing, right?
Absolutely. It's a very symbiotic relationship, I would say. So it's many people believe that developers are probably not that valued, but I would say you are equally valued.
Okay. So last question in these more general questions before we get to the technical set. Is it possible to move from another field to HFT trading? So I think the question here is, I get either an entirely separate field, like we've looked at people who are from, say, the automotive industry, or from chemical engineering or something, over to where they use some similar skills like high performance computing and some grid computing and so on in those other fields, but totally different field, not finance, over to HFT. And they say, if yes, which are the skills, attitudes that you are looking for in a candidate with no previous HFT exposure or experience?
In short, yes, it is possible. It is not easy, but it is possible. Even at Portofino Technologies, we did have somebody who came from the automotive field.
Oh,
He
you
is a
did? Oh, really? Okay. Okay.
Actually, he did. Did his master's in computer engineering. He used to work for a very well-known company in the automotive industry, joined us, and then moved on to Google. He was with us for 1.5 years. So yes, it is possible, as long as you have worked on valid projects, as long as your understanding of low-level programming is solid. And in terms of skills, I would say the trading industry in general ticks very differently than other industries. So basically, performance is measured on completely different parameters here. It's a very, very fast moving industry. So probably you would have to be a bit more focused on your performance, on being productive, on delivering here. I wouldn't say in all industries it's the same, because I have worked in other industries and I know there is a significant shift here. And people here are extremely competitive as well. So if you thrive in that kind of an environment, of course, but you should be up for it. I don't want to, please don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to, what should I say?
Frighten them off,
Yeah,
or
frighten anybody, but
yeah,
you should know what you are getting into.
yeah,
For me personally, I like fast-moving environments. If I do not like to work where I just know, okay, these are the jobs that I have to do, and I somehow pull through 9 till 5, and I'm not happy there.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've been on worked on trading floors, for instance, before, and there's there's just an excitement once you enter the room. There's sort of the level, the types of, you're hearing these things every now and then. Well, I mean, in the types of floors I was on, you'd hear someone shouting out, some coded description of a derivative they need hedged, to throw, shouting that to some other desk, and it's going back and forth. You go, what's going on here? It's a great feeling, so exciting, but it's got to be rather different from what you're going to hear in a lab, where you're making cars. I mean, it's very interesting, but a totally different feeling, right? Yeah, a lot of fun.
That is exactly the type of atmosphere we have over here as well. And in fact, what we also have is one very interesting concept. We have the magic wall, which are basically screens, which we have in each of our office, and every office is connected to these screens. And because you just can't shout loud enough for your voice to reach London or Amsterdam from a different city, you just go in front of the screen, unmute it, and speak to the people in the other office.
Oh, it's great.
People do the stand-ups, from 3 offices, they're just standing and talking to the stand-ups in front of these screens. So that's the kind of environment we have.
Right. Oh, that's really good. Okay, well, we've actually got through our questions there, our more general questions. So thank you very much. Now, don't go away, because there's going to be more questions that are coming in from the audience, I think, as we speak. But now we want to talk to Mike. I'm not even going to say your surname, because I haven't practiced, but I'm sure I could get it if I tried hard. But actually, we were talking about people coming from outside the industry. When Jahan was describing, you did in some internships which were in the industry, but then you went to CERN, right? That must be very interesting. Where you, I think, got your initial real industry experience, and associated with your studies. How was the transition from that type of environment into a real sort of high pace HFT? How did that go? Oh, you're
First of all,
muted. Oh, yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you for inviting me on.
It's a pleasure.
So, as you said, I wouldn't say the transition was that dramatic for me. Like, still working at CERN, which is kind of a big public project, is much more relaxed than the environment here. But I don't feel like it was a huge shift in my way of working. It's still like you at CERN, you still follow the same development principles, the same kind of, although I wasn't involved in research, I know that the same research principles are followed there. So I won't say it's a huge shift other than, as the Bolina said, the pace picking up a bit more.
Right. So I mean, for instance, I sort of read between the lines, you're talking about doing sprints and things. Is that,
Exactly.
sprints which has become the sort of norm in the industry, and you have a similar type of model but in both places.
I would say not only the organization things like sprints and how you manage the team, but also things like how you manage code, how you contribute, what is the review process. Like it's very close, like it's very close to each other.
Industry standard. It's become industry standard now, hasn't it? Yeah, that's good. Okay. So well, also what was the biggest actual surprise that you didn't expect, I guess?
Okay. I would say the biggest surprise was how, like, again, coming from a PhD based on artificial intelligence and machine learning, the biggest surprise is how hard it is to apply like complicated models like neural networks to HFT. Because like the time it takes to compute like a pass through a neural network is so large, no matter the processor, that it's almost not like you are not going to start with this. You're going to get to it when you get to implementing these things in FPGAs.
Right.
Like, so it's the surprise is how simple the models, the machine learning models needs to be in order to be competitive.
Right. Yeah. So you just can't let enough cycles go by to get a machine learning algorithm off the ground in the normal sense, right? Yeah. Okay, so I'll go to the questions. As I say, these have all come in from outside us, outside our group, from Reddit and so on. What do you think is the #1 skill needed to succeed as a quant in the HFT environment?
So I would build on top of the Bolina's previous answer, and that is software engineering, because and that depends on the shop you're targeting. If you're targeting firms that are small to medium size, software engineering is a must. Like, you're not going to be able to get your ideas off the ground if you cannot code them up. It won't be easy to be extremely competent in maths and statistics and not be able to kind of showcase that through code, through implementation. As you kind of progress to the larger and larger firms, you become like a cog of the big machine. Your focus narrows very sharply, and there you might be able to depend more on statistics, like maybe like your math background, you coming from some sort of field that is kind of novel, like some physics fields, I don't know, astronomy, can bring some insights to you that the big firms want. But at that point, it's more, I would say, the math background. But for the medium-sized firm and small-sized firms like Portofino, I think software engineering is the top priority.
So, because I guess you do the whole problem. I mean, I'm just sort of imagining that perhaps you've got some trading strategy that's been brought together by the team, and so what you write Python for it to sort of show it, and then when you need to get it into production, you'll convert it to C++, or you'll write part of it in C++, something like that.
So we kind of follow a model where we try some, like the initial exploration does happen in Python.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you want to implement any sort of kind of interaction with the market, you have to do it in C++,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes through our simulation engine. And then you can wrap that kind of simulation engine through Python again to kind of cross-reference multiple parameter values and kind of present your result as whether it's working or not. But there is this very initial stage of Python that goes sharply into C++. But
Right.
talking about the industry, I would say there can be a much bigger scope of Python going on before actually going to C++. Like there are some places where you will implement the full thing in Python to showcase that this will actually most certainly work, and then move to C++ because the cost of writing C++ is much higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so is having your own successful quant trading strategies enough to land a job? You can show them. I mean, I guess you'd have to show them by showing them having been successful actually in the market, not just backtesting, right?
Yeah, of course. And I think we got a kind of similar question for Debolina as well, but I would add to that so it will showing up with a successful trading strategy or quant algorithm will open the door to an interview for sure. It will intrigue the company you're applying to, but it will not land you a job. Like trading strategies that people come up with might have like risk profiles that are not appealing to the company they are applying to, or they might not scale. As you add the actual volume that the company intends to use, the strategy breaks down completely. So it's a good thing to show up with one, because it will show that you are actually interested in the field and you are very passionate about it. But don't expect that you will show up with it and
red carpet, come in and here's all your monitors, sit no, that's
exactly
not gonna happen. Okay. So how can I become a better quantitative developer? I assume this is someone who is already a quantitative developer and wants to, well, move on. And then in the same question, what are the best projects to do to learn more about quant research?
Okay, so I would say, so this is two different things, right? Quantitative development and research. And I also think I saw a Q&A question about this. What's the difference between the two? I would say the quant developer is more interested into the actual low latency implementation where they get like as efficient as possible the C++ code from the trigger signal to the actual trade signal that you emit. From the, market data signal to the trade signal. And the quant researcher is the person that inspects like historical data and tries to figure out new alphas, new signals to suggest new quant trading ideas. And also like manage existing ideas, maybe change them as market changes. So how can you become a better quant developer? I would say there are many resources online about like problems of low latency C++ that you can train yourself with. And that's very important, to be quickly competent with C++ to be able to implement low latency code easily, not make usual mistakes that people in C++ make when they first pick it up. That's how you become a better quant developer. And a better quant researcher, I would say, is somebody that follows the latest research that is published and also comes up with his own ideas, maybe publishes his own research if it's not proprietary, but also is like actively developing and interacting with a trading system so that he can test his ideas. And if you're not already a quant researcher, which might be the case, I would say try to develop your own ideas. Use platforms like your own platform, ProfitView, to try out things, backtest your ideas and see how that back and forth goes.
And the questioner asked, are there any projects you could recommend that could be the basis of learning about quant research? Is there anything you can think of?
I would say it's the things I'm coming up with are very generic. Like, as I said, try to come up with some signal by looking at market data, process the market data, make them into features, make them into signals like, oh, I see the price changing by this amount. What if I try to put a limit on it and say, oh, if the price increases by this amount, make a buy trade and see how that goes. It's not about coming up with something that works straight away. It's about coming up with something simple and see what the results of it are and how the results change as you change your idea.
Developing
that, develop the intuition of changing your idea and coming up with new ideas.
Right. Okay. So now, programming languages. I know that Portofino is heavily Python and C++. Is there anything else going on, or besides Python and C++?
No, I would say those are the main languages.
Right. So generally speaking, what languages are in use in quantitative research, as far as you're aware, and what's the and which language, I guess, of those two is more important in the HFT field, Python or C++?
So other than those two, I would say that I've talked to people that use Java and R. Rust is slowly coming up as well as a C++ replacement. But now comparing C++ and Python, I would say that going off of what we already said, Python is more for research and more for doing some initial test of your idea. And then C++ is a must if you're going to be high frequency.
Right.
Applying it in high frequency. Like, there is no way that you can go at it with Python. What I like, a small addition to this, is that for digital assets like Bitcoin, the markets are not efficient enough and are not fast enough yet to kind of take the full advantage of C++. Even if you are extremely fast on the processor level, when you hit the network, you are still not collocated with exchanges. So there are, I've talked with people that use Python and do high frequency trading in crypto. Obviously, they use tricks like optimizing code with Python, if people have heard of it.
Yeah, sure.
But they still manage it. It's still possible. But my view is that at some point, as the industry kind of evolves, we might get to a level where like C++ implementations will edge out any fully Python implementations.
Right. Yeah, that's right. I guess it's it's in the end, it's the sort of the jitter, which is the issue. When there's jitter like that, you might be ahead sometimes, but then other times you won't be, and it's the value of that high frequency to the market, it sort of dissipates. So the next question is, I'll just read it out as they've said. You might understand this better than me. If my LeetCode skills are weak, will I still be able to pass an interview? The rest of my skills seem irrelevant, as I'm not super fast at doing LeetCode. So that is what I've been spending all my time doing. Are there companies that do not do LeetCode style interviews in this industry?
So it's an unfortunate truth that LeetCode is kind of a big blocker in this situation. LeetCode is a very good proxy to understand how good a developer is and how fast they can implement algorithms. So it's a very cheap as well proxy, like, to ask of people, and you are able to do some filtering with it. But I would say that if you aim at very big companies that are already established, expect very hard LeetCode challenges, because they won't kind of try to work with less. But at companies with with smaller companies, you will be able to get easier LeetCode challenges. Still, you will get LeetCode challenges, but LeetCode challenges that can be solved by somebody that hasn't extensively trained on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually you get some, like after you clear that, you get some project, take at home project that will be more at a 1, 2, 3 day pace, where you can actually show how you work, prove that you work as people want. And that is much more, I wouldn't say easy, but I would say more fair to people that are actually working and want to show that their work is what's good about them, not their quick thinking of algorithms and kind of LeetCode problems.
Right. Yeah. Because I guess I'm sort of thinking of that, you know, you do get some people who are you know, they might be very skilled, but simply become flustered, you know, and so in a sense there's a risk that you might lose out on getting someone better, in fact, who in the actual job would be better, because they sort of get flustered. I mean, I guess it's something, you know, you won't be flustered if you practice enough. I think you practice and practice and practice, right? That sounds about right. So okay, for you, what about, so you're basically, you're a quant researcher, that's your focus, but you understand the what about template yourself? Do you get into template meta programming and that type of thing?
So I will, like, as Depolina mentioned before, I am one of the people that did this transition where, although I came from a university research background, I started as a developer because like infrastructure was needed to be built, and then transitioned to a QR.
Right.
So I would, and yeah, I have interacted a lot with C++ and did template meta programming and all of that. Like I would say it was my actual like professional introduction to all those things when I joined Portofino. Before I was more like the university course C++ level.
Right. Yeah, because when you actually get sort of confronted with having to build something which is going to execute trades and very quickly and with significant risk, it changes the way you look at the code, doesn't it? It changes your attitude.
Yeah, for sure.
You when you check it in, you want someone to review it. You say, please review this.
Yeah.
So what about being a quant or quant researcher motivates you? You know, gets you going so that you're if you are eager to come to work in the morning.
So I will get the elephant in the room out of the way. Like, obviously, compensation wise and future prospect wise, it's a very lucrative thing to look at, but this is not what gets you up in the morning. Like, thinking about that doesn't get you up in the morning excited about what you're going to work on.
Sure.
It's the difficult problems you are solving, the projects you are working on, that's kind of motivates you to work on them. And it also is easy to get like the feeling of success when you can measure the success of your work. So it's, in other professions, it can be harder to measure how good the strategy or whatever you develop is. But here, if you develop a strategy, you get immediate feedback as soon as it is deployed, as in how much money is it making, what's the P&L.
Right.
So you can immediately get a feeling of like achievement out of your work.
Yeah, achievement that you can actually measure, not just numerically, but you can in terms of I don't know, bars of gold or houses or something, right? It's
exactly,
like, wow.
Yes.
Yeah. So actually, we got finally. I think it's a good question for trading strategy. And you partially answered this, but since you had a background in artificial intelligence, for trading strategies, is artificial intelligence used very often in HFT firm, or is it more frequent to use classical techniques, for example, statistical arbitrage?
So the things that come to mind with statistical arbitrage can be considered artificial intelligence. But so I'm assuming that the person is more talking about machine learning learning from data, having algorithms learn from data. So I would say both will be used. Statistical arbitrage and statistics in general, math is going to be used for more pricing, and then AI is going to be used more for signal generation and alpha generation. So to clear things up in people's minds, I would, in my intuition of how an HFT system works is that you have your pricing and you have your signal generation that then generates alphas, and then you have your execution and mechanical alphas, and all those three things come together to kind of decide when to buy, when to sell, based on your pricing and based on your alphas that is added into your pricing.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So it's sort of in the end a mix, and you use what you can, right? It's not a question of oh no, I'm going to use some AI strategy. It's like, well, how am I going to make money, right? And that focuses
exactly.
you, right?
And
look,
that might not only include AI, but also it can include like pure low latency development. Like an alpha for you can be being able to get a signal earlier on. Even that is something beneficial. So that's where quantitative development comes in as well.
Right. So okay. Well, we've spent quite a lot of time. It's been great question and answer. But now the fun comes along. It's time to I think I'll go over to you, Jahan, to bring up our lucky guy.
Thanks a lot, guys. That was really interesting. So yeah, now, as Richard says, we're moving on to the mock interview. We've apologies. I think the chat didn't appear to be working. I'll need to fix that for next time, but we had some volunteers already who posted on the Q&A, and we basically found one person, Vishal, who's kindly agreed. So I will now invite him on. So let's see if he can join. So let's have a look. Oh, there we go. Hello, Vishal. Can you hear us? I think you might be on mute there.
Mute myself.
Oh, great. Great.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and where are you dialing in from today?
I'm in the greater Chicagoland area, more of a C++ developer, maybe have a little bit of understanding on Python, but I think I'm more towards the C++ portion, have kind of done a little bit of embedded systems, a little bit of software development, networking, unit testing in general. I do have a little bit of understanding of kind of these, although I would rather be more on the development side rather than the researcher side. So.
Okay, great. I've just sent you, I think you should be able to see a link there that I've just sent to you privately. So that'll allow you to actually have access to the code editor. And I'll hand it over to Mike now, and Mike can kind of take it from here.
Okay, perfect. Vishal, thank you for coming to this mock interview. And so if you click on the link that was provided to you, I think I can see you in the editor. Let me share my screen so that people can observe as this goes on. So you can see we have 2 questions. Let's start from the first one. The second one is a follow-up, so stay on the first one in the beginning. You can read the prompt on the left, and then the template code on the right. You can fill in your implementation.
Right, I see it.
So this is a problem that is seems like a quant research problem, but it's actually a quant dev problem, I would say more.
Right.
So please take your time, read through the question, and during the time you are answering it, I would appreciate, as I do on actual interviews, for candidates to take their own time for 2, 3, 5 minutes, as long as they need, to read the question and understand it. And then as you implement your solution, I would appreciate if you can kind of talk me through your thought process and how you intend to solve it.
Okay, so I think in this case, the idea is that we have to figure out what from the we have to take pairs from the yeah.
Take your time and think about it. We can even continue some discussion if you want, Richard, Jehan as well.
Do you mind if I change the thing to C++?
Unfortunately for C++, I won't be able to kind of run the check, but
Okay, so sorry, I was just because I think yeah, never mind. I'll keep it at Python. Not like the best. I just am trying to remember, well, like you know, what are the variables that you can get with Python? In some ways, I'm just trying to figure out. Oh, this is dot.
I can kind of help you along if you want.
Right. Basically, I'm just trying to figure out how many oh. Okay, yeah. So that's that. Yeah. So basically, I'm doing that. Now, is Python actually 0 based or is it 1 based?
It's 0 based.
Okay, so price equals -1. I'm just doing. So in this case, I'm just actually, I should, right?
Let's talk about Python and C++. Just because it's an interesting topic, given you use both languages.
I use C++ more than Python.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's all right. You keep going with this. We'll just keep the guy everyone else amused with our witty conversation about these languages. Actually, we did a webinar about a few weeks ago on Python with C++. I'm not sure, Mike, if you saw that. What we looked at was PyBind 11. Do you guys use PyBind 11?
Not at the moment, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
right. It's sort of based on Boost, yeah, it's a sort of a standalone. I think it's header only actually. Anyway, we used that to expose the Parquet library, the Arrow Parquet library, to Python. Of course, actually, the Python Python libraries use Parquet and C++ underneath, but we basically did a small version of that, and it's quite instructive as to, in a way, how straightforwardly these days you can sit Python on top of C++, without, you know, five line errors all the time and all this sort of thing that in my experience used to be just the norm in the past.
It's yeah, PyBind is very widely used. I have worked with it in the previous firm I was working in, the previous hedge fund in London as well.
Right.
And it's a very handy tool if you have like some small parts that you need to optimize. It's very good, even if you do not care about low latency, but more about like completing a task in time, not wasting too much time.
Yeah. Well, in the implementation with Arrow uses what do you call it? Visitors, which is no one really uses anymore. So it was funny to have to use a visitor. But maybe we can ask Vishal to explain his thought process here.
So basically what I'm doing is I'm creating two indexes, one for like the starting. Oops, I think I did I made a mistake slightly.
Vishal, you can keep going on. I'll just do some like semantic corrections from C++ kind of notation to Python as you go along.
Okay,
Don't mind me.
Oh.
Don't worry about that, Vishal. It's understood. You know, this is just sort of make Pythonizing. I don't believe that's something which would be a problem. You know.
Okay.
Your CV would say you don't know Python, and so you know, it's like you can't be expected to know something you don't know.
Yeah, I'm not like I think I only have basic Python. Just so basically, the idea is I'm doing an ifs. Basically, I'm taking you know, taking kind of like a bunch of pairs starting with I, and then actually I think J should be.
Yeah. You can go ahead and correct me if I kind of misinterpreted something.
Well, basically, I think you don't want to do like I to the size. It should be like 1 minus the size rather than size itself. And then you want to
it will stop at size. It will stop at size -1. So you get what you intend.
Right. Well, actually, it does. It doesn't exactly. So basically, by stopping at size -1 and then doing the J at, you know, 1 after the I, so basically you're taking the two pairs and kind of since you're dealing with that, I do believe that this still would work. It just kind of has an extra comparison, which probably doesn't do anything except for maybe like it does a you know, zeroes out the max price at the first value, because you're sending like when you're sending the first iteration. Oh, actually, no, this won't work because you're doing J. J should never be, you should never do it for, because your changes don't work because you don't really care about, you might be going backwards. So for
exactly.
Example,
Correct
right.
Observation. Yeah.
The one that I did before actually did not do, did it correctly because I assigned the I value into the J value, or actually the I+1 value into the initial J, and then did the range from those portions. So that kind of actually you know, made that work. But this your changes that you made for around the Python side to use like the Python ranges don't necessarily work.
So you wanted to start from I like this?
No, I wanted to start from I+1.
Okay, so there you go. Now it's as you wish. And if you wanted to reach up to size -1, this is it.
Okay, yeah.
So you can run the code if you want. On the top right, there is a run code button to check it out if it works or not. So there is an invalid syntax here, which we can fix quickly and rerun it. So
What is it? Complaint.
so you didn't name the same here, so that's fixed as well. And oh, yeah. So you got, this is the error, like we expected you to print out 0 and you printed 1. I think it's for the second case. Like this was the input of the second case. You predicted -1, whereas the answer is 0.
Oh, basically the default. Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, it probably was just that I was using wrong defaults, but I was assuming that, you know.
So we can say that you only return up to 0 like this.
Right.
You will not return an answer less than 0. So yes, this worked.
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. I think actually the issue was I returned -1 because if there was no value, because
That's okay. That's okay. But I want to ask you something. So a follow-up question on this. So what is the complexity of your algorithm? Can you tell me?
I'd say n squared, because you're kind of going through the same range, although maybe yeah, I think it would be it would be n squared because you're kind of going through the array twice. Although yeah, I think you're going to the array twice. But that
can you think of a way to make it to change it? Don't change it now, but let's discuss. Do you see of a way to make it linear instead of n squared?
Okay, yeah, yeah, I think so. If you yeah, so yeah, we don't necessarily, okay, so we just need to find like the min element and the max, kind of like a min element and the max subdivide the array into like min and max elements, and kind of fix those portions. We don't necessarily need to compare everything.
I see where you're going, and it's the correct route to go towards, yes.
Right.
But again, for the interest of time, I would say let's move to a bit of an extra problem that builds on top of this. And again, I don't think we will manage to solve it right now, but I want to kind of get your initial ideas and what kind of programming paradigms you might try to follow to solve this.
Okay.
And for the audience, I have to give credit that these questions are kind of adaptations from a LeetCode question that I really liked in the past, and I kind of that's where the credit comes from, like LeetCode.
Okay.
How about we leverage this question and basically get it out to the audience and get them to submit. Do we have an email address they can submit their responses to? Maybe what would do one of you guys want to share your email address if that's okay?
Sure.
What we'll do?
Okay. We've got, yeah. Go ahead, Jahan. Sorry.
I'll post this in the chat here. So if anyone who wants to have a go at this second harder question themselves, will maybe copy it, maybe post it in the Telegram group. I'll also send it around afterwards in the email following the webinar. So if anyone else wants to have a go, yeah, please go ahead and send in your answers.
And Vishal, sorry about this, but we've actually gone on too long anyway. It's our fault. I mean, we just got sort of hung up on these questions. And because what we want to do now is go to the audience for their questions to us. But thanks a lot for coming to, for being our interviewee this time.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Vishal, and yeah, really appreciate your, being very confident to come on, and yeah, I suppose this gives everyone an idea of what kind of things would be involved in an actual interview. Vishal, I'll move you back as a attendee. So yeah, thanks, Vishal. We'll move on to the.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll move on to the Q&A now. So
great guts.
Yeah. Good job for the first question. Really good.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So so yeah, the first question I see here, it's just all in chronological order. So I'll just ask how they come. So Vishal actually asked, do you use any other operating systems other than Linux and Windows in your company?
So we actually do not use Windows at all. It's just Linux-based systems.
Okay.
Wow. No Windows anywhere?
Anywhere. I think it's if somebody opens up their personal laptop with Windows on, he gets sunned. Like
so desktops? I mean, like administrative desktops?
So the way we work is that we use remote clients, and everything is, even the software on the backend is Linux as well, for both for the desktop and for everything else.
Excellent.
Okay, great. So someone asked about the algorithmic trading course. It only asks about Python. Why not also C++? So a number of reasons for this. I think Python, there's a lot more libraries for doing data analysis, visualization, and also just for speed and ease of use. I think we decided to basically run the course in Python, but all the kind of things that we cover would also apply there. I'll move on quickly to more questions because we have a lot to get through. So yeah, this is an interesting one. So how can I network and connect with others in the high frequency trading industry, especially if you don't have any prior experience or connections in the field? So I think either Debelina or Mike, if you've got any thoughts on that.
I would say one thing that's building on Debelina's previous answers, like going for a master's degree if you're young is a very good way to get connections with people that then disperse into the industry, and then you get connections to that. Other than that, Debelina can pick up what other avenues there are.
I would suggest over here, we do have a wonderful Telegram group. Richard, Jahan, how many people do you have there? I think more than 500.
More than 500, and it's a very good group. We get on really well.
Feel free to join there. It's an amazing way to learn more about the industry, get insights from industry professionals. I know that there are very, very experienced people on the group and from very renowned firms as well. And this would give you an amazing opportunity to network. Other than that, if time permits, there are many events. For example, you have the C++ meetups, monthly basis. I think Phil Nash, Richard, Jahan can also give you some more details on that later on. So try to attend one of these meetups if you're in London at some, or if you are in US, try to attend. There are conferences, there are quant conferences, there are trading conferences. Look them up. The larger ones could be a bit expensive. The smaller ones are not that expensive, but they do give you the chance of networking with people. If you're serious about networking, attend some of these events, I would say.
I think after the COVID sort of generally dissipating, a lot of the meetups are coming back. For instance, I live in Paris, and there's a great C++ meetup over here. Usually it's hosted by Murex, but there's other groups as well. Really very interesting, a lot of fun. There must be lots of that type of C++ meetups around the place in the States as well. In New York and in Chicago. So,
yeah, I think if you go to meetup.com, you can usually just do a search there, and there are quite a lot of groups across various cities. And yeah, thanks for reminding. Yeah, if there's anyone who hasn't joined the group already, you can follow this QR code. And I also posted a link to it in the comments, so you can find out more there. Okay, I'll move on to the next question. So what are some of the specific mathematical concepts and tools that are used in high frequency trading? And how can I start building my understanding of these topics?
That's a really hard question, and it's, I would say, a bit too general, because high frequency trading itself lends topics from many different subjects, and sometimes even unrelated subjects. So I would say there are quant focused master's degrees and university courses that you can start with. But other than that, I cannot really name some specific tool for you to kind of go off of and yeah, I'm not sure that I can quickly come up with some specific tool you can go at. Like obviously there are a lot of medium frequency things that you can try on your own. Things like you know, technical analysis, which is not very in my view, is not very kind of you need to prove it through trying it out and see how it works on your out of sample data. But for HFT specifically, I would say focus on how you can get market data and apply some sort of simple feature extractions. Like from my kind of studies, I would focus on what kind of feature extraction I can get from market data, and then creating some labels on top of them and try some machine learning classification algorithms on top. You can start with simple things like linear regression, random forests, then move on to neural networks, more complex structures like CNNs and LSTMs. But again, this is very much biased by my own experience. For many kind of other people, their experiences are completely different. And that's why it's hard to kind of give you a single direction. It will be extremely biased on my part, and everyone reaches that point from a completely different route. Yeah, so I would say for me, machine learning, that kind of topics.
Okay. Any particular books you'd recommend or anything like that?
Let me come back to you on that, because I think I had one in mind, but I don't remember the title right now.
Okay, great. So here's another question from Dhruv. How do you switch from a software developer role to a high frequency trading firm? Any advice there? Perhaps Debalina, you have some experience with people moving across industries.
I think this would be very similar to what we had already discussed in the initial part of this webinar. So yes, if you are from outside of the industry, I would definitely recommend that you learn about financial markets, you learn about the trading industry in general, get acquainted with some of the terms like what is spot trading, what are options, what are the different types of trades that you can carry on, what are the different asset classes, what are the different companies that are there in this within this space. And as you start doing your own research, you will see that one thing leads to the other. So generally read up and understand about the space, and then of course focus regardless of what seniority you are. It is very rare to find a completely managerial position within the trading industry that does not require you to be an individual contributor at all. This is a big difference between other industries and the HFT, especially HFT, I would say. So if you have a couple of years of experience and you see that you've probably moved on from being as hands-on, try to become hands-on yourself, because the firms within the firms in the HFT space, they are not, you will hardly ever find a firm that has hundreds and thousands of employees. These are small firms, and they are structured very lean, and they work in small teams where even the managers are individual contributors. So basically, that is something I can only stress as much as possible, that try to focus on your programming skills. If you've moved on, then focus there. If you are still a fresher, try to do the LeetCode style problems, and try to improve your LeetCode, improve your algorithmic coding skills, your problem solving skills. That would, of course, come if you have a competitive programming background. You generally have very good problem solving skills. Yeah.
Do you mind explaining to some of our viewers who maybe haven't come across the term individual contributor before?
Okay.
Well, yeah, just in case.
Individual.
It's quite a common term, but maybe
it generally means where you are hands-on yourself. So you are programming yourself. In other industries, mostly if you are a manager or a team leader, you are probably not actively programming or coding, but this is so individual contributor in this case would mean being hands-on yourself. Yeah.
Okay, great. We have a question here. What is your opinion of Jane Street? But maybe we'll just ask more generally, other firms in the industry. Is there any way that these, firms like Portofino differentiate themselves? How should you compare these different possible places you can work?
I don't think it is fair to compare Portofino to Jane Street, because Jane Street is one of the leading firms within this space, and they have been around a long time. Jane Street is a very, very well-known firm. They are one of the largest high-frequency market makers that people know if you have been within the space. And in fact, Jane Street also does a yearly coding challenge, which can, so if you can crack one of those, I guess you'd directly get the opportunity to interview with them, or maybe a direct internship. Many other firms, for example, IMC, Optiver, this has become pretty common. So they all have their coding challenges, especially for juniors, where you can actually just sign up and try to participate, and you can win cash prizes, or you get invited for an interview.
Will Portofino do that?
Not yet, not yet. But yes, we are very, very small at this point of time. But of course, going forward, that is something that we would definitely consider doing, but not yet.
Okay, great. Rob asks, can you get by with just JavaScript and Python and not lower level languages? Are there any rules in the company that would allow that?
Do you mean for Portofino, or in general about the industry?
I guess, yeah, you can speak on, if you can speak on both.
Well, within the industry, as Mike also mentioned, there are firms who do work with Java, but just JavaScript, I am not so sure. If you want to be working in the high frequency trading space, this is a very, very latency sensitive area. And you need to be proficient in one low-level programming language. Mike, just correct me if I'm wrong, or if you would disagree, but yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, great. We have a question. How do you seek an internship at a high frequency trading firm as an undergraduate student?
You can apply to their internship positions. They generally have the internship positions written out. They would also, so they would generally also, if you follow these companies on LinkedIn, they post that they are taking in applications for internships. So that is one of the more common ways. One other way is, of course, you can always be proactive. So you can always reach out to the company themselves. And so every company has a contact address. Just pop in an email, say that you're looking for an internship, mention a time, somebody would get back to you. But also if you are contacting any company, be it Portofino or any other company, this is of course cross industries. Expect that there are many people are trying to reach out to them on this contact address. So expect delays in responses, but of course people would get back to you because your email would have to be forwarded on to the correct department, to the correct person, and somebody would get back to you sooner or later with more information.
But something to add on top of that is that seeking internships is a very good way to get your foot in the door. You have much better chances to land an internship than to land an actual job, like a senior or mid-level job.
Mike, could you share maybe about your experience getting an internship at Winton? Like how was that? What do you think made you stand out?
It was pretty surreal, to get that out of not being in London. Like I wasn't coming in London while living in London. I just applied from abroad and then joined them. So I would say my previous projects was one big part that they initially got interested in me, because which was like I tried to make my own small market maker program that was based in machine learning and consuming data feeds and then deciding how to spray the market with orders. And I think we did discuss it during the interviews with them, and it was one thing that stood out to them. Other than that, of course, performing in the interview itself, and it was interesting because the interview was very much real world based tasks and not LeetCode. It was more about can you refactor this code, can you fix this bug, and how do you implement something like relatively simple but important when you are actually working.
Okay, great. Someone asked about a bare minimum for a GitHub project. I think you covered projects already, but is there anything else you could say about, what would be a good starter project, or even
I would say, like, again, for no need to make it very complicated about how smart your strategy is or how much money it makes. Seeing a well-structured GitHub project with tests, like showing you can actually work in an environment that needs tests, coverage, like if you're using Python, typing all your variables, being able to see that you can work around these frameworks will give you a big boost. And the project itself can be consuming market data from one or two exchanges and then trying to build some strategy on top of that. But making it seem like it's production ready is really helpful. It gives the idea that this person is actually well versed into the language that they're using and can jump in and be productive very quickly after joining.
Okay, great. So another question, I guess it's also about moving between industries. So do you have any experience from people in the games industry moving to finance? And is there any areas where they excel or any areas they would need to improve on? There's also a follow-up question on C++, but I think we've already covered that.
I can take that. From the games industry, yes, we do receive a lot of application from the games industry, people from within the games industry. And this is, of course, very relevant for us because games industry and trading has one basic thing in common, and that is latency sensitivity. And so, and of course, dealing with high volume, high data volume, high amount of traffic. And of course, if you have been working in the game industry or sports betting as well, that puts you in a very good space, a very good place, and you would be a preferred candidate among the top preferred candidate from outside of the trading industry in general.
Okay, great. Are the interview rounds similar to FAANGs? So, like the tech firms? Are the problem solving, system design, and behavioral? Like, would you say you follow a similar format?
Yeah, sort of similar. I can just briefly explain how we do it at Portofino, and other firms, they have a very similar structure, 1 or 2 rounds here and there, more or less, maybe. Initially at Portofino, it would always be a screening call with somebody on the talent acquisition team. Until and unless you have been presented to us by one of the recruitment agencies that we are working with, then they would have done the screening on our behalf. First step, regardless of seniority, would be an online assessment. If you are a junior to mid-level applicant, you would be taking part in a timed algorithmic problem. You would be solving a timed algorithmic problem. If you are more senior, then we do understand this requires practice. Most people have moved on from there. We would be giving you a more relevant problem, which is a problem to solve that we would encounter during our daily work. And this would be a take-home assessment. It is not timed, so we would send you the question, and you have around 2 weeks of time to come up with your solution and send it to us. You could send us a GitHub repo, or you could just send an email us your zip file. You are free there. And after that, there would be at least 2 for juniors to mid-level applicants. There would be 2 rounds of technical interviews, similar to what you just saw today. One would be with junior. First round would be with somebody junior, a junior dev or a junior quant, depending on what you are applying for. Then it would be another technical round with a senior dev or a senior quant. If you are a senior person, you would be doing more technical rounds with the tech leads as well. And the final round would, for very juniors, the final round would be with a tech lead. If you are a senior, the final round would always be with the management of the company.
Okay.
In total, it would be a minimum of 3 to 4 rounds. For seniors, it would be around 5 rounds. And that is also one of the big differences between other industries and the trading industry in general. If you've only interviewed for industries outside of the trading industry, you are more used to maybe 1, maximum 2 rounds of interviews. That is unheard of in the trading space.
Okay, great. Another question: what's the scope of opportunities in high frequency trading for people with experience in hardware accelerators like FPGAs and ASICs?
I could answer this, but I think Mike would be able to answer this better.
So again, my own experience is not that wide to give you a full answer to that, but depending on what stage you join a company in, if you go to one of the big firms that work in traditional markets, you already, like, these are almost requirements. You have a much better opportunity if you have this expertise with hardware accelerators and ASICs, yeah. So at this point in crypto, you may still find them useful. Like I've talked with companies that actually use them, people working in companies that use them, but it's still early stage, so it's not that you are out of the market if you don't work with this. But yeah, it's very, I would say it's very appropriate for people with this kind of experience to go into HFT.
Okay, great. What about pure technology roles like low latency C++ developers and also more experienced candidates? Are you talking mostly about quant? So I guess what's the question getting at here?
I think it's whether we need quant developers more or less than quant researchers, which is kind of going off a previous question. And I would say like C++ that are developers that are more less quant research focused, but more development are still extremely valuable and extremely sought after.
I think there was also a sub question there asking, are you going for just new people who are new, or what about lateral hires? Are lateral hires a big thing for you? Experienced people from other industries.
Yeah, I would say for sure for C++ and low latency development. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think like we've probably covered quite a lot of questions that are starting to come up again. So maybe I'll just try and find some things that we haven't covered yet, and maybe we can wrap it up soon. Here's one probably we haven't had yet. Do you prefer one-page resumes? Or it doesn't really matter?
It depends. Well, if by one-page resume you mean that you want to reduce the font size and just try to squish two-page resume into one page, probably not. I don't have very good eyes. but no, just jokes apart, it doesn't matter if you have a one-page or a two-page resume. Avoid your resume, avoid to make your resume more than 3 pages, but it is not necessary to have a one-page resume. It is, some people do take the time and create a one-pager out of their 2 or 3 page resume, just to highlight everything in one page, and then if somebody finds it interesting, they go ahead and read the whole CV. That is a good, that is a trend, that's a good thing as well, but you do not need to do that. I think having a structured resume is better than having a shorter resume.
Okay, great. Another question. So someone's created a successful trading algorithm, but would not be comfortable uploading it to GitHub. How do I talk about it or reference it in my CV? So I don't know, maybe they don't feel comfortable, they don't feel confident about sharing it, or maybe they want to keep that private.
Of course.
Is that such a thing?
So I would say you can still, no need to share the algorithm itself, but you can add a small description of what you try to do and leave out the parts that are proprietary to you. And again, I from personal experience, as I did something similar for my kind of private project of a market maker, I was very hesitant initially to share the details of it. And then as time went on, I realized that it's not that, like, this is not going to change something. No one is going to copy it and make it not work anymore for myself. Again, this depends on what you're actually working on and how well it's working. But from personal experience, something that I developed was not, at the end, I understood that it was not such a secret and such a extremely good algorithm that I couldn't share it. After a while, I started sharing more and more details about it. I still haven't pushed it on GitHub, but I'm very open about discussing it with colleagues and people from the industry.
Okay, great. We also had a few questions to do with age. So people asking, am I too old to get into this industry? Or maybe they've already, past 40 years old, or even older, is there any kind of, I guess, you know, what would you say to someone who feels like maybe is it a young person's game, or, you know?
It depends on your field, on your current expertise, because many times you just can, as Richard said, like do a lateral move because your skills are very close to what is needed. But I can kind of also tell you that me personally, I joined when I was 31. So again, I would say if you want a concrete real world example, I joined, and that if you are younger than this, you can for sure make it, and I'm sure you can do even if you're older.
There was a guy in I won't give his name, but a guy who became the head quant in a large investment bank, who had what amounts to being 2 or 3 lifetimes of careers before he got into being a quant, and nevertheless proceeded to become the head quant at an investment bank. So as at least one data point, certainly you can, if you have the will and the energy and the conviction, go. Age doesn't need to be a factor. But go on, Debelina, sorry.
I would like to add one thing here, though. If you are coming from transitioning from outside of the industry, flexibility would also play a big part of this in how you make the transition. If you are a senior, maybe you have 20 plus years of experience, you are a senior in your current company, you are a senior manager or a VP, you should be flexible enough to take a role that would probably be, down step in terms of your career level, and then you work your way up again. So if you are fixated on the job title, that if you are head of R&D, you go from any in a completely unrelated field, and you come into the high frequency trading or a trading firm, and you want to join as the head of quant, that would probably be extremely difficult. So, but if you want to, you could probably start as a mid-level or senior quant, and then work your way up to be a head quant. That is something that I believe could be relevant.
Okay, great. I have an interesting question here. What do you think is the future of quant finance, and how will it be different from now? So maybe let's look 10 years from now. What do you think will be different?
So I think the field is getting more and more efficient in what is going on and systematic. I'm trying to compare it to how it was maybe 10 years ago and how it moved to today, and I don't see such big of a jump other than new science coming around, new machine learning models being deployed. Like, it's a pretty linear kind of trajectory that, again, I wouldn't be naive to say, oh, I can predict and extrapolate the same way in the future. But to me, it seems like it's like a steady improvement of algorithms, of technology, of speeds, of efficiency.
Well, we have a whole new asset class that affects things. Yeah.
Which
is changing rapidly itself. Yeah.
And it's very nice to have this, knowing how existing traditional finance assets have moved towards being more regulated, towards being more efficient, and we can, adapt the current digital markets to that kind of historical data points for traditional finance, and be relatively certain that that's where it's heading.
Yeah, if anyone else has any thoughts about the future, on what they think, maybe you can post it in the Telegram group. Be interesting to hear other people's thoughts. Okay, I think we'll wrap it up here. We've had lots of, we covered quite a lot of ground, and it was very interesting, certainly for me anyway. Whenever I finish the webinar, you'll see an exit interview, or exit questionnaire. So please just take the time to answer that. We really appreciate your feedback on this, and see how we can improve, and just hear your thoughts about other types of content we can deliver in the future. So yeah, thanks again, Debelina and Mike. It was a pleasure having you guys join us.
Yeah,
Really great having you, and
great talking to you.
Thank you very much for inviting us. It was an amazing interactive session. We had a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, and yeah, look out for an email in the next couple of days. I'll send some more follow-ups with recording, and also the question that Mike, the second part of the question that Mike was doing in the mock interview. All right, yeah, thanks guys, and yeah, see you all soon.
See you. Bye.
Have a good evening.
Good
Bye.
evening.